Friday afternoon to you. Hope your weekend's off to a great start. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Spencer Schultz from the SB Nation Baltimore Beatdown. We will talk plenty of Ravens with Spencer. We're going to begin, though, by talking some Browns and some Cavs with the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff. So it was announced training camp getting ready to go for the Browns. July 28th, they will begin with 2 practices that are not open to the public, but July 30th will be the first of 12 practices that are open to the public. You got to go through a lottery to get tickets. Let's welcome in the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff. Dennis, I cannot remember a more anticipated training camp for the Cleveland Browns, and I go back quite a ways. I'm an older guy. I go back quite a ways with the Browns. It's good that the fans will get out and be able to see this training camp.
Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed with the way things are happening in this country. It's cases, we trust the Browns to figure it out, and I can't wait for fans to be able to see it. I do remember anticipation a couple years ago, Dave, for the 2019 Browns. And, that didn't turn out too well. But I get your point. I mean, this has a better feel than to go because of what they're coming off of. They're coming off of a highly successful season as opposed to in 2018, a losing season. So, yeah, the season can't get here fast enough. Therefore, training camp can't get here fast enough.
The other difference is the front office that was here in 2019 and the coaching staff did not have a real proven record. You were going on kind of a half season, and John Dorsey was still give him credit for assembling some talent. A little bit different feel with just the entire feel of the franchise. Let's be honest. It looks like it's headed in the right direction finally.
Yeah, it does. And I'm glad does deserve credit for some of the pieces on this roster. I'm not exactly sure how many, but he shouldn't be forgotten because he did acquire some quality players who are still going for the Browns. But it is remarkable to think not long ago how the Browns were viewed as a toxic waste dump, a garbage disposal, mocked nationally. Players supposedly didn't want to get anywhere near Cleveland as a destination. The Muslims, all that was not that long ago. I mean, Dave, I was there when a head coach of an NFL team jumped in the lake, albeit for charity, but Hugh Jackson in Lake Erie and Bay Village after so to go from that to this in relatively short period of time is nothing short of remarkable.
All right, let's turn our attention. Best pass protecting offensive lines ranked. Browns number 1, Packers number 2, Cardinals number 3, Ravens down at 14, and the Pittsburgh Steelers 31. And let's not forget to mention their quarterback, Ben Roethlisberger, not very mobile.
Dave, where are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers ranked?
They are somewhere between 4 and 10. I didn't see the exact spot, but they're ranked up there decently.
I mean, they looked awfully good to me last year in the Super Bowl, and everybody's back. So I think Tampa has got to be mentioned among the elite pass blocking lines. I can see why the Browns line is getting love because that front 5, as long as it stays healthy from left to right, Wills, Bitonio, Treader, Teller, and then Conklin, it's tremendous. And they're all good individual pieces together better. Browns have a few guys who you could sub in for quality if need be, but that front 5 is the reason why they get the ranking and they get the love. And I'm sure Baker Mayfield would agree that he's got arguably the best line in the NFL. But the Chiefs line, I know they've reshuffled the deck and be fine, especially with Mahomes being able to cover for sins when they occur because of his mobility. You mentioned the Steelers. I mean, it's no surprise with the guys that they've lost on that line. And yeah, they brought in some decent pieces, but you would think it would take a while for this line to have continuity, and you're trying to learn on the fly, chemistry and continuity on the fly for a very immobile quarterback. So big challenge for the Steelers O-line, and quite frankly, I couldn't care less.
And I'm corrected. Tampa Bay 16th. Remember, it's based on pass block win rates. So Tampa Bay was 16th in that. All right, so similar line of thought. This is ESPN, their rankings of the top interior offensive linemen. This is voted on by players, executives, front office types. And again, interior, so we're talking basically guards and centers. Number 1, Quentin Nelson, the Colts. Number 2, Zach Martin from the Cowboys. Number 3, Brandon Schreff from the Washington football team. Frank Ragnow from Detroit is 4. Joel Bitonio ranks number 5. So Bitonio in the top 5.
I mean, I certainly agree with that. I was waiting for you to mention Wyatt Teller as well. Anybody who's gone up against Teller would probably vote him high on the list. Bitonio's a rock. He's been there for a while, and you're just a super steady pro. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me on any list I see of highly ranked offensive lines or offensive guards to have Bitonio and Treader up there, no shock at all. Bitonio and Teller, and then Treader. To me, he's the most underrated player on the Browns by far. And I know in the locker room they rate him highly, so they would say, "Well, what do you mean he's not underrated to us?" But when outsiders talk about the success of the Cleveland Browns specifically, Treader doesn't get mentioned nearly as much as he should. And to think about his warrior mentality last year, I mean, he was banged up. He was injured. He was playing with injuries that I'm fairly sure would have sacked a lot of guys or sidelined a lot of guys. This dude's the embodiment of toughness. He's incredibly smart. And, I think the world of Brown center J.C. Treader.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's underrated and probably deserves to be thought of a little bit better. Just a tough guy and does a lot of the line calls and kind of that thinking man's lineman that might get overlooked a little bit. All right, so you mentioned Wyatt Teller. He was also receiving votes, so an honorable mention in this rankings. Take a listen to what an AFC defensive player said about him. Came out of nowhere. Tries to punish people, like his style. That's the whole Browns offensive line. It's good. That's an AFC defensive player. Go ahead, D-Man.
Yeah, I'm sorry to have jumped in. I was going to say, all right, we're gradually building a motivational tape for Cleveland Browns players. I think we had Tannenbaum for Baker. This week we've got others receiving votes for Wyatt Teller. I want him to plaster that on his locker. Okay, you said I'm an other receiving votes. All right, you'll see.
Keep in mind, those are the guys that don't have to go against them. You saw what one of the AFC defensive players said about Wyatt Teller. All right, same line of thinking. AFC or NFL execs, top 10 offensive tackles, and it goes number 1, Trent Williams. Number 2, David Bakhtiari from the Green Bay Packers. Laramie Tunsil from Houston was 3. Also receiving votes there was Jack Conklin. And again, I think the thing is they didn't say his skill set is off the charts, but he's just a guy that's kind of relentless and just keeps after it. And I think Jack Conklin might be a little underrated as well.
That's a good point because Jim was a lot of it last year, and rightly so. Seemed like he got a little more attention maybe even than Conklin did, but they're bull. Conklin, the veteran, he's nasty. He's good. He's really good at what he does. He's physical, and to have those guys as the bookends, Wills and Conklin, it's tremendous for the Browns. And the other part about it too that's so fascinating is Conklin could go to left tackle in a blink of an eye, and Wills could go to right tackle in the blink of an eye if need be. So these guys are incredibly versatile on top of being very talented.
Yeah, and the scheme that Kevin Stefanski and the Browns run perfectly fits Jack Conklin. That's one of the things that's been equally impressive is they don't ask guys to do things that aren't in their wheelhouse, and I think that's a sign of good coaching, good organization.
Yeah, and they're obviously well coached by the legendary Bill Callahan and his schemes. And, I'm glad you mentioned what you did about the blocking schemes, because we talk about Baker Mayfield praising his offensive line. Well, of course, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt would praise him as well.
The D-Man, Dennis Manoloff, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we have a voicemail of Truth and Reason on Colin Cowherd, and we'll also hear Colin Cowherd's thoughts on the Browns Super Bowl window. Is it open? Is it closing? Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. Yesterday we heard Colin Cowherd kind of do a little two-step, little zigzag with the projected win totals that he had for the Browns this year. We've got a voicemail of Truth and Reason on that very topic.
Hello, this is Troy Kozlowski calling from Cleveland. Just heard your segment today about Colin Cowherd. I call him a coward. Anyways, I heard his segment, you guys' segment on him contradicting himself. That guy is a walking contradiction. He's the biggest Cleveland sports hater that I know of, him and Stephen A. Smith. And just wanted to touch a little bit on, I think that guy, I think when he goes to sleep at night, I think he dreams about the Browns. I think really he loves us, but he doesn't want to admit it. Go Browns. Love your guys' show. Dog check. Over and out. Woof, woof.
All right, Troy from the voicemail of Truth and Reason. D-Man, I think he is an entertainer, being Colin Cowherd, and I think he realizes in the Browns fan base he's got one that is loyal and loud.
We like Colin Cowherd, man. He constantly provides us with material, stuff to chew on. I got no issues with the guy because he is a a steady flow when it comes to the Browns. Yeah, it does seem to spend an inordinate amount of time talking about the Browns and about the Bake Show, probably because he knows how rabid the fan base is.
Yep.
And he's heard from the fan base. You know, if he talked a lot about other teams some other teams in the NFL who don't have quite the following that the Browns do, then it probably wouldn't be nearly as interesting, even if he was saying provocative stuff. So, you know, it doesn't surprise me whenever Cowherd says something about the Browns, but I have no issues with it either because we get to talk about it.
Yeah, and you know what? There is always, I don't always agree with it. In fact, I usually don't agree with it, but I can see there are at least some shreds of truth and reasoning in the points that he's doing. Having said that, here's Colin Cowherd about the Browns Super Bowl window from today. Let's listen.
I think it's partially open. I can't see Baker Mayfield hoisting a Super Bowl trophy. He did have 11 TDs and 1 pick over his last 6 games last year. So I think Stefanski understands what he can do and what he can't, so it's partially open.
D-Man, if I was better with Photoshop, you know Baker Mayfield would have a Lombardi trophy held high in the air just so we could show it to Colin Cowherd. I get where he's going, but again, I don't agree, even a little.
Yeah, here's the thing. I wouldn't mind it at all if the Cleveland Browns won the Super Bowl and they said afterwards, we have Colin Cowherd to thank for motivating us. I'd be like, Colin, thank you so much for motivating my favorite NFL team toward winning a Super Bowl. But as far as the window, I mean, it better be open right now. I mean, I don't want the Browns to go into this season thinking, oh, you know what, maybe we get to the AFC title game, or maybe we get past, the division round or what have you. No, the goal should be get to the Super Bowl and win. When you look at viable AFC contenders, you try to step back, even those of us in Cleveland, try to step back and say, okay, what rosters could you foresee representing the AFC in the upcoming Super Bowl? The Browns are one of those teams, along with the Ravens, of course, the Chiefs, the Bills, maybe the Titans. But the Browns are on the relative short list. So to me, once you come to that conclusion, that means your window is wide open to chase the Super Bowl. And as far as when it closes, I mean, we'll know soon enough, when the Browns are unable to keep certain guys or performance lags. But right now, I wouldn't say it's partially open. I'd say it's wide open.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's one of the younger rosters. You've got guys that are ascending. You don't have a lot of guys on the other side of 30. Heck, you don't have a lot of guys on the other side of 25 or 28 on this roster. So I would that would be why I would disagree with that. All right, Bleacher Report. Biggest concern for every NFL team before the season begins. And for the Browns, this is one I know you're going to like. It's managing expectations.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree that the standard answer every time that kind of question comes up or that kind of statement comes up is injuries, health. Every team in the NFL, their biggest concern is staying healthy. But assuming that, let's say, every team magically stays 100% healthy, then what is the concern for the Browns? And part of it, without question, is not believing the hype, not thinking that you just roll out there, put on the helmet, thinking that anybody's going to hand you anything. The Browns have to remember they haven't won a division in eons. They're not defending anything. So if they keep that kind of mindset and that kind of mental sharpness, mental toughness, they can solve that managing expectations problem. I would also the ability of this offense to score against quality teams. And that, of course, means that I'm still bothered by 22-17 against the Chiefs in the AFC wildcard round because, or was it divisional round? I'm sorry, divisional round. No matter what we said about the Browns defense last year, and there was plenty to be said, plenty to be desired, the fact of the matter is, in large part because Mahomes only played 2.5 quarters, the bottom line is the Browns needed to score 23 points to win. That's it. And they didn't do it. So I think this offense has to prove that it can score against quality defenses.
All right, that leads me to my next question for you. So if I could give you one wish for this year's team that would magically make the Browns reach the Super Bowl and potentially win it, what would that be? What would you say if the Browns do this, they're going to be in real good shape?
Well, again, an obvious answer. If the Bake Show continues his ascension and improves on last year, I think the Browns have a chance to go really far. And as of this moment, I have faith in Baker Mayfield. But to get off the obvious answer of Baker and the also obvious answer, my wish is to see the Brown offense clicking on all cylinders. I'm going to say on the defensive side, my wish is for a fully healthy Myles Garrett and a fully healthy Jadeveon Clowney. I would love to see what those two guys do if granted full health. And we know in the NFL, full health is a relative term. They basically are at 80% the entire year, even when they're entirely healthy because of the pounding that their bodies take from the jump, even from camp, let alone the first game of the season. But relative health, if it's there for Clowney and Myles, that's my wish because I can't imagine how much havoc they could wreak on the quarterback.
Yeah, I would not want to be an opposing quarterback if both those guys are healthy and can get after it. The D-man, Dennis Manoloff, now going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, is Joe Woods under pressure this year? We'll take a look at that. I'll explain what I mean by that. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese. Before we can safely come together, we need the facts. As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions. Should I get it? Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with the D-man, Dennis Manoloff. So, Dennis, last year I thought Baker Mayfield was under a little bit of pressure because the Browns went out in the offseason and they gave him everything. They gave him a right tackle in free agency, a left tackle at number 10 draft. They signed a really good tight end. This year, I think Joe Woods is under pressure. The Browns went out and completely overhauled that defense. It needed to be, and Joe Woods, to his credit, didn't say much about, oh, we're undermanned, we're under this, we're under that. Is Joe Woods under pressure because the Browns went out and got so much on the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, you can definitely say that, Dave. I think that to a man and a woman, in the case of the Browns, they would all say, the entire staff over there would say they're under pressure, and that's the way it should be. I mean, you're in the NFL. We hear about NFL standing for not for long for the players. Well, it can also that also applies to coaches and coaching staffs. So you're going to win and you're going to perform. So Stefanski would probably say, "Hey, I'm under pressure to win this year," even though pretty sure that they'd stick with him even if this season was rough. Joe Woods would probably say the same and say, I welcome it. I want to be under pressure. I want expectations to be sky high for this defense. Yes, I've gotten a lot of gifts under the tree, and I'm going to sprinkle them around the field and hopefully get some guys back from injury as well. So the expectation is that this defense is going to be different. And I see, because Joe Woods is a very bright guy and obviously knows his football, knows his defense. And I want to see him with the weapons at his disposal. I want to see what he can do. What kind of a defense is it going to be? What kind of attacking defense is it going to be? How is he going to utilize the quote unquote playmakers? What do the three look like? Is he one of those 4-2-5 setups that we keep hearing about? What are his sub packages going to look like? Is he going to put 7 guys on the line, occasionally, a la Buddy Ryan, mix a little 46 in there, turn his linebackers loose every once in a while? How about some zone drops? I'd be fascinated to see Miles and Jadeveon Clown every game. So there are all kinds of possibilities. But as far as Woods being under pressure, I would say, yeah, but it's no different than any other coach.
So we'll move on. CBSSports.com. Rookies drafted after day one, so after the first round, who could earn key roles. And they had it for everybody. And for the Browns, this one's not a surprise. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
100%. As soon as I saw that in our pre-show meeting, Dave, I'm like, that's the Joker right there. I mean, he's a guy who, I know he said on draft night, when he was drafted, the second day, he said, listen, I don't need all that outside stuff, and I don't have to take names as to who was drafted ahead of me because I have intrinsic motivation, which is fine. But I also think it's going to gnaw at him that he was a second-day pick, and he'll be flying around the field. My expectations for him are sky high. Maybe they're too high. I got to be realistic, I guess. But because I liked him so much at Notre Dame, and because he jumped off the TV screen whenever I watched Notre Dame play, I'm thinking, all right, I want to see that. The NFL level. It might take some time, but what have we been starving for, Dave Bacon, here in Cleveland, as those of us who observe the Browns, especially on the defensive side? Guys who fly around the field, sideline to sideline guys who just figure out ways to make plays. Maybe they don't fit size-wise in a certain mold or whatever, but they're just ball players. They're just football players. That sounds cliche, but you use it to describe guys, Jeremiah Koramoah. Like, you go out there and you figure out ways to wreak havoc on the game. And I can already see Owusu-Koramoah, if he does what I think he's capable of, I can already see him being a factor in the 2 Ravens games when it comes time to hem in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, he brings speed and athleticism. Those are two things that you want in the middle of the defense that Browns were a little lacking a season ago. All right, so also from the Bleacher Report, this one's a little interesting. Trade packages for Xavien Howard. That's cornerback from Miami. Wants a contract extension, may end up getting traded. So this one, there were 6 of them. One of them involves the Browns. Browns trade 2022 second and fourth round picks and Greedy Williams to the Dolphins for Xavien Howard. You're laughing because I think you like that, D-Man.
I mean, if I'm the Browns, yeah, but there's no way the Dolphins do that deal. No chance. I mean, Greedy Williams as a centerpiece time. I mean, maybe you say the draft picks are more important, but if I'm the Dolphins and I'm entertaining offers, I'm not interested in Greedy Williams. I got to see Greedy Williams play, an NFL game again before I invest in him at all. So, Howard is a terrific player. I don't think that is a realistic possibility, number one, because I don't think it's good enough for the Dolphins, that kind of package. But number two, the Browns have to be thinking about, the bottom line. They have to be thinking about dollars and cents here. And, you bring in a Howard and you're already dealing with, you got a big contract with Miles and you got Odell you're thinking about. And he's already under a big contract, and Jarvis, Baker's coming up, and Chubb, and then Denzel. So I don't know that would make, the fiscal sense. But sure, if I could rob the Dolphins of Howard, I'd fleece them like that, I would.
Yeah, the other thing is some of these national people that are coming up with these trades are looking at the Browns' salary cap, which is one of them. They have more room under the cap than most teams. But the Browns are probably going to use that as they roll it into signing long-term deals with Baker Mayfield, Nick Chubb, Denzel Ward, Wyatt Teller. So that's why they have that space in the cap. It's going to help them sign their extension-eligible guys. The D-Man and I, Dennis Manoloff, going to step aside, take one more time out. On the other side of the break, the Hall of Shame for the last 20 years for the Browns. We'll have a little fun with that. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
At Social Security, we are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. A My Social Security account allows you to access your earnings history and benefits information, request a replacement Social Security card, get a proof of income letter, estimate and apply for benefits, and more. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security. Securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff. Dennis, this is one I thought you'd have some fun with. Doug Poundili, Hall of Shame for the last 20 years. It's a list of 10. I'm going to go 10 through 5 and then the top 4. So 10, Brady Quinn, quarterback. 9, Dante Stallworth, wide receiver. 8, Deshaun Kaiser, quarterback. 7, Corey Coleman, wide receiver. 6, Justin Gilbert, cornerback. 5, Brandon Weeden, quarterback. So there's your first run at that. And my line of thinking, I think Justin Gilbert should have been a whole lot higher because he was an 8th pick in the draft. But a lot of quarterbacks on that list.
I agree, and I have to have a full mea culpa every time Brandon Weeden is mentioned. I thought he was a guy the Browns would I wanted the Browns to take him. I thought he would have a good NFL career. I never predicted greatness, but Weeds just flopped, and that's a stain on my ability to project college to pro, because I just thought he had the cannon arm and he could sling it around the yard, especially in the inclement weather. But yeah, I agree with you about Justin Gill. And in defense flop, I mean, at least he was a 20s pick in the first round. But yeah, Justin Gilbert, I can't wait to hear who's ahead of him.
Oh, you can think of some of these. All right, so 4, Courtney Brown.
I got 2.
3 is Trent Richardson. 2, Dwayne Bowe. Dwayne Bowe. And then number 1, Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see how you argue Manziel as number 1, most infamous, Hall of Shame. Bowe, just a ridiculous tenure in Cleveland. So I actually don't have a problem with Bowe being number 2. Trent, yeah, I mean, Trent and Weeden were supposed to do damage. You know, those first-round picks that year, they were supposed to do damage for the Browns. Got off to a promising start and then fizzled. Trent was weird, too, because he came out of Alabama, and, I mean, he looked really good. You know, he did. I mean, anybody who claims that they were sure that Trent Richardson was going to flop in the NFL, I disagree. I don't think you're telling the truth, because the Browns were universally praised, as I recall, Dave. Correct me if I'm wrong, for drafting Trent Richardson. And, you know, he came from Saban, and everybody was excited to get him, and he just didn't have it. You know, his rookie year was okay, and then he fell off the map. Yeah, I don't have too many issues with that, other than, as you said, I would put Gilbert number 2 behind Manziel. Yeah, those 2 guys in the last 20 years, to me, are the 2 biggest Hall of Shamers.
Yeah, Gilbert was 8, and everybody was questioning the pick when it was made. I mean, he wasn't even on anybody else's radar that high. So that kind of he just didn't have it. All right, so NFL.com has a superstar club, and we have a couple of guys from the Browns, one coming in and one going out. So Nick Chubb comes in, Ezekiel Elliott goes out from the running back spot, and as a wide receiver, A.J. Brown comes in, and Odell Beckham Jr. goes out. Only on the offensive side of the ball, when you add one, you got to take one out. This is NFL.com Superstar Club. So Chubb replaces Elliott, A.J. Brown replaces Odell Beckham.
I agree with both of them. Yeah, I certainly agree with Chubb. I mean, if I have to gain a yard, I want Chubb over Zeke. If I have to gain 4 yards, I want Chubb over Zeke. Maybe I'd rather have Zeke as a pass catcher, but I feel like Chubb could catch passes as well if he needed to. So I don't have any issues at all there. A.J. Brown in for Beckham, yeah, you could make an argument there, make a case there, and understand why. Odell is in the same situation, in my mind, that Joe Burrow is, the quarterback of the Bengals, and any other guy who's coming off of major surgery. How are they going to perform post-major surgery? Now, most of the time, these guys are able to respond, especially with modern medicine, and they look as good as new. But you never know until you actually see it. So while we're waiting to see what Beckham looks like after his, torn up knee, I'm okay with Brown subbing him in or subbing in and Odell subbing out.
All right. Before I let you go, let's turn our attention to the NBA and Team USA. Kevin Love, banged up, opts out, not going to Tokyo. I don't think you're terribly surprised.
Yeah, I shouldn't laugh at Kevin Love's expense, but you know what? I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. I was on the radio on WTM 1100 when the news broke that Kevin Love was going to be on Team USA for the Olympics, and my first 20 seconds were dead air because I was speechless. I was like, what? Love on Team USA when he couldn't play more than a couple of games last year for the Cavs? And once I got to speaking about it, I said, I'll believe it when I see it. In other words, I'll believe Kevin Love as an Olympian again, because he's already got a gold medal in his pocket. I'll believe him again and I was proven correct. He's out. It doesn't shock me at all. We don't know exactly what the issues are, but apparently the calf is acting up. And in one sense, I was sitting there going, why in the world would Kevin Love be allowed to play, or would he even want to play for Team USA when he knows that he didn't do anything for the Cavaliers and was injured the vast majority of the season? So wouldn't he want to rest up for the season of the Cavs, for which he's paid $30 million? But on the other hand, I thought, okay, if he does go ahead and play for Team USA and proves himself to be healthy somehow, then an NBA team could be watching and going, you know what, maybe we will take a flyer on this guy and take him off the Cavs, because the thing to get Kevin Love out of Cleveland is good for the development of this team.
The D-man, Dennis Manoloff, doing 1100 AM WTAM pregame show for the Indians, 106.9 as well, FM. Try pregame and post tonight, Dennis?
Yeah, I have a show from 7 to 8:30, then a pregame, and then I don't have postgame tonight because they're on the West Coast. But yeah, busy night tonight. WTM 1100, 106.9 FM.
Make sure you listen to him, the D-man. As always, Dennis, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, Dennis Manoloff, the D-man. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Spencer Schultz from SB Nation Baltimore Beatdown will be along. We'll talk some Lamar Jackson, Ravens and Browns when Sports4CLE continues. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We are going to welcome in Spencer Schultz from SB Nation Baltimore Beatdown. Spencer, appreciate the time very much. Let's talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson contract extension. There's some thought here, we're talking about Baker Mayfield getting one as well. There's some thought here that the three guys, Allen, Lamar, and Baker, might be kind of waiting. Nobody wants to really be the first because these things usually work where the first guy gets the less than the second guy, less than the third guy. Is there that kind of thinking out in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson as well?
I think that the Ravens are waiting to make sure that they have properly treated Lamar Jackson and his contract situation with a very familial aspect. And the Ravens pride themselves on trying to be very open and honest with players, something that John Harbaugh, Ozzie Newsome, now Eric DeCosta over time have hung their hat on as being an honest organization. Eric DeCosta went down to Boynton Beach, Florida, where Lamar Jackson is from, and their first talk was just simply about, where are you from? I would like to see your town, your neighborhood, your family, meet everyone. And they want to do it in a family ties sort of way. They've made it completely crystal clear that they have no intention of doing anything other than signing Lamar Jackson. So obviously without him having an agent necessarily and having mentors and advisors, he doesn't have an NFLPA certified, agent or mentor or advisor. So it's a little bit of a different situation, but Lamar Jackson has been on the cutting edge of that. He was the first round pick and the first draft pick to enter the draft without an agent, and has had tons of success branding himself with Oakley, with his own clothing apparel. So he feels very business savvy. He is in a good place, and the Ravens are gonna get it done. They want him. They want to try and set it up in a way that is going to make him very happy, is going to make him feel like they're putting their full faith into him. And in terms of Josh Allen and Baker Mayfield, there is that kind of Mexican standoff at all times where, somebody's going to have to make the first move, and who is it going to be? And I'm sure that the Ravens are happy that Lamar Jackson doesn't have an agent that they have to jump through hoops with necessarily, while he does have his own mentors and advisors. So it's an ongoing situation, but it has been made so evident that the Ravens want to get it done quickly. They want to get it done before camp or sometime before the season. So it's inevitable at this point. And overall, it just doesn't feel like there's a ton of pressure on that situation.
So the next thing, this shocked me, and I'm guessing you're going to say, that there's no chance of that. Bleacher Report came out with 6 players most likely to hold out of training camp, and Lamar Jackson was one of them. I saw that, and I'm like, I haven't heard anything even remotely like that. Fair to say that probably isn't going to happen?
I would say that it's a very, very small possibility, if even possible at all. He's been working out with his receivers, with his teammates. He was present for OTAs. He was present for all of that. He hasn't expressed any inkling of discontent or malcontent. I mean, he's not even into his 5th year option yet. So it'd be a different story maybe if we're talking about a franchise tag next year. And if hypothetically the situation did reach the point where the Ravens don't get an extension for Lamar Jackson, it reaches next offseason and the talks aren't going well, I would think that might be holdout territory, but I don't find that to be the case. And there's been no signs or any sort of writing on the wall that would indicate Lamar Jackson is unhappy with the Ravens, who have publicly stated how much they want him to be their franchise quarterback for a long time.
Let's say you touched on it. He's working out with his wide receivers. Is there a sense of excitement around the Ravens with what you guys have done, or what the team has done with the wide receiver position? Sammy Watkins, Bateman, Tylan Wallace. I mean, there's a pretty significant upgrade. I guess the only way you can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first major move, the first domino that fell, and it was a rather big one, was David Culley was wearing 2 hats as the receivers coach as well as the pass game coordinator, working alongside Greg Roman. And what that details, they've never been outward about whether he was doing install or whether he was merely the vessel of Greg Roman's passing concepts or what exactly that was. But when he was signed by the Texans as their head coach, the Ravens then split that into 2 avenues. They brought in a wide receivers coach, T. Martin. You might remember him from his Tennessee days and maybe being drafted ahead of Tom Brady. And he was a prolific quarterback for the Volunteers back in the day, but he's had experience with USC. He's worked with Robert Woods and Juju Smith-Schuster and tons of NFL talent out there. He also worked with South Carolina. So tons of experience there. He's a fresher mind. They think that he's going to bring in an approach of how to deal with this younger receiving core a little bit more so than David Culley, who has been in the NFL for over 20 years. So he's going to be fresh. Then the Ravens also brought on Keith Williams, who is Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams and a litany of other receivers' personal receiving coach, and has been an offensive coordinator in college at the collegiate level. And he is expected to shake things up and get involved with the running backs as well and the entire pass game coordination. So that was the first major piece. Then throughout free agency, there was a lot of discontent and concern about not signing guys like Corey Davis or even Marvin Jones, and the entire situation that occurred with Juju Smith-Schuster, where the Ravens and the Chiefs both offered him more and he stays in Pittsburgh. But ultimately they ended up with Sammy Watkins. And my perspective on Sammy Watkins was that he is an improvement to maybe a Seth Roberts of 2019, or maybe even a Willie Snead, just in terms of talent, while Willie Snead was a very solid chain-moving receiver for the Ravens. But Watkins is a guy that can play on the outside, that can play in the slot. But my perspective was he can't be the only move that you make. If he's the only move that you make, it's not enough. And so what do the Ravens do? They go get the glass slipper of kind of the Ravens Twitter world and the Ravens Nation, Rashad Bateman in the first round, someone who is one of the most complete outside wide receivers that can play X. He's very difficult to press. He's physical. He has a long wingspan, a big catch radius. He works well at all three levels. So someone who's bigger and smoother, but not as quite large as Miles Boykin, who is a pterodactyl of sorts, but hasn't been able to get his head on straight in games and hasn't been a consistent target that has drawn the confidence and trust of Lamar Jackson. And then they double down and go get best player available in Tylan Wallace, who a couple of years ago, right before he tore his ACL, you're talking about a potential first-round player who went to Mobile, and I got the pleasure of seeing, and he really shined in the Senior Bowl and showed that he can play in the slot and do some different things. So there is a ton of excitement. This has the potential to be one of the top 3, 4, and of course, maybe even the best receiving cores in Ravens history.
Before we go to a break and change folks a little bit, is there any concern about the interior offensive line? Whenever you hear any type of concern about the Ravens offense, it's kind of that, the center and guards, or is that kind of overblown and the Ravens feel a little bit better than maybe people are hearing outside of Baltimore?
Well, last year was an absolute mess, to be honest. They had multiple centers. They tried to draft Tyree Phillips. Well, they did draft Tyree Phillips out of Mississippi State, who had played tackle throughout his life. They want to move him inside. They named him the Week 1 starter, which is very unusual for John Harbaugh teams to have a rookie offensive lineman starting Week 1. That didn't go well. They brought in DJ Fluker. That didn't go well. Matt Skura comes back from the trifecta of knee injuries, ACL, MCL, PCL, and he's rusty, and they had trouble snapping the ball. Ultimately, it boils down to their divisional round loss against the Buffalo Bills. They had snaps on the ground. They had snaps 20 yards, behind the offensive line, all over left and right. They had smaller guys as well, sort of finesse players. Now you bring in Kevin Zeitler, a proven behemoth right guard who has been a consistent force in the NFL for a decade, former Cleveland Brown. Browns fans know him very well. They draft Ben Cleveland out of Georgia, who is 6'6", 357 pounds and runs under a 5-second 40, who can come in and lay some authority. And then they slide their 6'5", 320-pound guard Bradley Bozeman into center now. So suddenly they have this hulking behemoth offensive line. They had Alejandro Villanueva, and then you get Ronnie Stanley back, and it's a much more athletic, aggressive, confident offensive line. And as long as Bradley Bozeman can do what he did at Alabama and snap the ball well, the Ravens are in good shape, and they're going to be able to run the ball downhill a lot more than they did last year and get some better pass protection.
Spencer Schultz and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll get Spencer's thought of if this Ravens-Browns rivalry is developing, and also some thoughts about the Ravens defense. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sports for CLE. We continue talking with Spencer Schultz from SB Nation, Baltimore Beatdown. Spencer, let me ask you this. Do you get a sense the Ravens fans consider the Browns now a legitimate, threat in the AFC North? Or is it still
absolutely.
Okay.
I think they certainly do. The Steelers are in a weird sort of paradox right now where Ben Roethlisberger is hanging on by a thread, and the Steelers have played the Ravens really well, and that rivalry remains intact. But the Browns have firepower. They have an outstanding offensive line. They have I think the most important part, perhaps, of becoming a rival is competing with the Ravens in an analytical sense. The Cleveland front office has done a great job building an entire analytics department that competes with the Ravens. Those are the two largest analytics departments in the NFL. So they have a formidable offensive line. They have superstars in Myles Garrett. Odell Beckham. Denzel Ward is a ascending superstar type player when he's healthy. And the Browns are competitive. They weren't able to give the Ravens much of a contest in the beginning of last season in that blowout game in Baltimore. But then you go and have one of the most classic games in the last couple of years, particularly in the regular season, within the division. So that was a high-scoring affair, a shootout. And I know that the Browns came out on the wrong side of that one, but you've got to feel good that the Browns were able to put up 40 points there. And that was the second kind of epic game in the Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield saga, dating back to their rookie season, that Week 17 basically play-in game for the Ravens. And I think that the Ravens absolutely view the Browns as serious contenders. They have a consistent approach. They have really balanced themselves out. They have a physical football team. They can run the ball well, and they're able to build a balanced passing game using a ton of play action and a very accurate deep ball passer in Baker Mayfield. So the Ravens definitely see the Browns as a threat, but the Browns just haven't quite been able to sweep the Ravens one year or really take command of it or have a year that kind of puts the Ravens in their place and makes it not sort of have that slight air of big brother, little brother still. But the Browns were able to do that to Pittsburgh in the playoffs last year and completely flip that narrative. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Browns able to have one of those games this year.
Let me ask you this. Ravens lost a lot on the defensive side as far as pass rushers go. Is that a concern, just some of the defections from that defense that was so good for the Ravens?
Well, the Ravens are taking a very different approach to rushing the passer. Wink Martindale blitzes more than anyone in the league. He has consistently brought pressure since he took over in 2018. And what Wink has made clear is that he wants to be able to blitz at least 10, if not 11 players at any given time on any play. Sometimes they play some single high, cover one, cover three, and someone who's 15 yards off the ball isn't going to be blitzing, but they want to bring the house. And the Ravens have really focused on interior pass rushers in lieu of those, B-list, C-list, Matt Judon, Yannick Ngakoue, kind of good, not great pass rushers. Calais Campbell they bring in. They also bring in Derek Wolfe. They draft Justin Matabuike, who had a great game against the Browns last year. Was really able to put up a strong effort against Wyatt Teller, who had an outstanding year. And so the Ravens have tried to rush the passer from the inside out, and they ask their outside linebackers now to do what I call the trifecta. That is drop into coverage, be able to blitz, beat up on tight ends, get a little bit of pressure, and hold the edge and stuff the run. So that's why you see them decide to pay a guy like Tyus Bowser, who's really strong in coverage and is well-rounded between those three areas, over maybe the more expensive Yannick Ngakoue, who can't help you in coverage much and isn't a super strong run defender, or Matt Judon, who is kind of similar to Tyus Bowser. You can debate which one's better overall, but commanded 3 times the money. So they go ahead and draft Odafe Owe in the first round, and that's a player that they feel can come in and play against the run on first and second down, has tons of athleticism. And Wink Martindale wants to get free rushers. One of the quotes of the offseason is him saying that sacks are overrated. So he wants to get pressure, he wants to get free rushers, and be able to blitz from all over. So they're taking a very different approach to rushing the passer, and we'll see how it turns out for them.
Spencer Schultz from SB Nation's Baltimore Beatdown. Appreciate the time and the insight, Spencer. Hope we can have you on a couple more times. Great stuff as always, and thank you very much. That was really interesting. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Dave. I had a wonderful time, and I hope that we get some epic battles between the Browns and the Ravens this year.
That should be fun to see. Appreciate it. Thanks very much, Spencer.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Spencer Schultz from SB Nation, Baltimore Beatdown. That'll do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Scheduled guests Monday, It will be Mary Kay Cabot, Brown's beat reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, as well as Tim Bielek, reporter from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Have a great weekend, everybody. We will see you Monday at 4 here on Sports4CLE.